So welcome. My name is Jess Sappington, and I'm the Food Systems Program Coordinator here at WSU Kitsap Extension. I work under our Regional Small Farms Program, which provides extension services for farmers in Clallam, Jefferson, and Kitsap counties. This afternoon is our latest online educational event where we're going to be getting updates about the L&I Farm Internship Program that's housed at the Washington State Department of Labor and Industries, and how farmers can connect and take part in that program. We're also going to be diving into a bit of a discussion on the difference between the interns and farm employees and legalities that farmers need to be aware of should you want to choose to have interns as part of your farm business. So today our presenters that are joining us is Christina Rodriguez. She's an L&I Agricultural Employment Specialist, as well as Cesar Sanchez, who's the Farm Internship Program Coordinator for L&I Washington. They're going to be doing presentation style today for you. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please utilize the chat function on the bottom of your screen. And we'll try to keep track of those questions coming in and facilitate if there are questions during their presentation we can get answered. Otherwise, there's going to be quite a bit of time at the end, hopefully, where you guys will be able to discuss and ask additional questions of them. We also have an evaluation link that I'll share towards the end of the event. So please make sure to take that. It'll also show up in an email afterwards with some resources to you all. With that, I'm going to hand it over to our presenters today so that they can introduce themselves a little bit further and get us started.
Thank you, Jess. So I just learned that Christina lost some, I think she lost her Wi-Fi, but she'll be back on here. Thanks for being here today. So today we'll be talking about the Farm Internship Program. Uh-oh, did I lose you guys?
I think we lost you for a second.
Oops. Can you still see the presentation on the screen?
I cannot, no. I think it might have popped off when you lost connection.
Let me try this one more time. So sorry about that.
No, you're good.
Is it up now?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, perfect. All right, so once again, thank you for joining us today. My name is Cesar Sanchez. I am with the Department of Labor and Industries, and I'm the Farm Internship Program Coordinator. I work at the Department of Labor and Industries, as I mentioned. I'm here today with Christina. Hopefully she'll be on here in just a few minutes. Sounds like she lost Wi-Fi. But during this presentation, we'll be covering the Farm Internship Program, along with a few agricultural employment standards towards the end. We asked if you have any questions, go ahead and put it in the chat. We'll try to answer them as they come, or we'll wait until the end. But feel free to just leave them in the comment box, and we'll get to it as soon as possible. Okay, so the purpose of the presentation. So before we begin, it's just important to remember that the information in this presentation is to keep the ag community up to date on the agricultural employment standards and the wage and hour laws that affect the agricultural industry. The Employment Standards Program is committed to helping educate the public about workplace protections and helping employers like you stay in compliance. So just a little overview for the presentation today. We'll be going over the purpose of the Farm Internship Program, some of the participation requirements, certification process, sort of what that looks like, and I'll be going over a few educational curriculum examples. Typically, that's what we have questions about as well. And then we'll go over the internship agreement, what that is, what a farm visit looks like, and a few agricultural employment standards towards the end. I'm going to go ahead and stop my video just to make sure I don't go away here. So, okay. So the purpose of the Farm Internship Program. So initially it was created to encourage people interested in farming to just try out for the first time, or maybe expand their own knowledge about farming. So the goal here is to provide a supportive educational environment for those participating interns and to allow them to develop their own techniques for cultivating and harvesting agricultural and horticultural products. So this program does allow interns to safely work on small farms, to learn about farming practices and gain that hands-on experience. That's so important in an internship. And of course, most of farming is already hands-on experience. But it's just a way to allow them to work safely, have that peace of mind in case they get hurt. But interns participating in this program are exempt from the minimum wage requirements, and they're not required to be paid. Instead of that wage, typically farm interns will receive the education and experience about specific farming activities, and they're still entitled to the industrial insurance protections just in case they get hurt, like I mentioned. So the first reason for them why the internship program was created was to train the next generation of farmers. In 2007, the Department of Agriculture, I know it's a few years back, but in 2007, they did conduct a survey where they wanted to figure out the average age for a landowner slash farmer, which is around 57 years old. I mean, we're talking about 15, 16 years ago. So that would probably put those farmers to the 70-year-old mark. So, I mean, as we know, farming is an important part of our history, but there aren't many people who do this type of job. So what we try to do is train the younger generation in the state to just have those future farmers. Often these new farmers do come from non-farming backgrounds. I've met people who used to be attorneys, engineers, people who used to work in Microsoft, who just decided to try out farming for a season and they fell in love with that life and they decided to pursue the farming lifestyle, which is great, you know, and that's definitely what we need, but it's just difficult to find formal programs for people who are just maybe starting farming. And this is just a way to hold farms accountable on what they teach the interns. So we try to make sure that it's taught in a structured manner rather than just, you know, come to the farm and learn. Your typical internship, if it weren't in this internship program, is, you know, just showing up every day, learning just by doing, you know, getting your hands dirty, working every day, and just, you know, immersing yourself in that life. However, the internship program allows for farmers to create a plan even before an intern shows up. And this just helps with focused learning and interns being able to have something to look forward to. The second reason is to minimize legal risk for small farms and to ensure compliance. As you may have heard or maybe personally encountered, injuries do happen at farms. We know that farm work is hard work, and because there's so many ways of getting hurt, the workers' compensation is just a way to give the farmers a peace of mind if that ever does happen. We know that that can be costly, you know, time consuming, but the workers' compensation program just allows, if something like that happens, we'll help you out and we'll help you through the process. Also, this program helps with businesses to comply with regulations. So as a Farm Internship Program Coordinator, I ensure that farmers who want to participate in the program are in compliance prior to being accepted. And being in compliance just shows that the farmer is in good, or it just shows good faith and that they're ready to take on those interns, which is something that we definitely look for. And farms may be out of compliance with the wage and hour regulations or workers' comp requirements. And these are the type of things that I look for while reviewing the application. I'll make sure that the farmer is in compliance with you know, some requirements that we have or regulations. And like I said, that just shows good faith on the farmers and to be able to take on those interns. So what are some of the farm internship requirements? So in order to be a participant in the program, you must be in one of the eligible counties, which currently there are only 20 eligible counties at the moment, but we're hoping that it does go statewide in the future. The farm has to be considered a small farm, earning 250,000 or less. And you might ask yourself, why the small farms? Well, usually small farms will have their owner or operator present, who is able to demonstrate and teach those on-the-job skills. Interns usually work close under the supervision of the farmer, and you know, they ask questions as needed. And that one-on-one time is something that we definitely focus on when you know, just asking how the internship's going for the intern while they're on the farm. With bigger farms, interns tend to get overlooked, you know, just because you have such a big facility, maybe you have many employees, and sometimes being a bigger farm, the intern just gets lost, maybe with all the work that goes on. That doesn't always happen, but you know, that is why we aim for the smaller farms there. Also, working on small farms is diverse. It's often manual and it does vary throughout the day, giving an intern an ability to learn a broad range of tasks, which is what we're looking for when you know, having interns on the farms. And those small farms are unlikely to be doing one repetitive task, thereby making their role unlike that of an employee. Another requirement is that there's no serious violations or outstanding penalties of either the minimum wage act or industrial insurance, aka the workers' compensation. So yeah, we just want to make sure that there's no wages that are owed to the workers prior to being accepted. They're up to date with their workers' compensation. Maybe if they have a payment plan, maybe if they owe some money, a payment plan is okay. Just want to make sure that they're on the right path to hiring those interns or just having them on a farm. Safety and health as well. It's not something that I put up here. It's not in the statute, but we do like to make sure that our interns are safe. Like I mentioned earlier, these are the things I look for when processing their application and when visiting the farm, just make sure that everything's safe for the intern and that they feel safe as well. Also, another requirement is that the farm or the intern does not create unfair competitive labor cost advantages, doesn't depress wage of experienced workers, and it doesn't displace experienced workers, which is something important. So this program isn't just to hire interns for free labor. It isn't just about having an extra pair of hands on the farm, although it is nice, but it's more about teaching the younger or maybe even less experienced generation about farming. Another requirement is workers' compensation. So it is required to be covered through workers' compensation. You must have an account with Labor and Industries. And again, that's something I look for before even accepting the farm to the program. This just protects both the injured intern, if they do get injured, and the farmer's assets. The risk classification is usually based on the type of work that's performed at the farm. I don't usually determine that. It'll be the L&I account manager. Currently is Michael Ruiz, and here's his information. And we'll send the information as well to you guys, so you have it in case you need to reach out to Michael. But essentially, they'll look at what type of jobs they'll be doing on the farm, and they'll determine what the risk class is. Typically, one of the things with the Farm Internship Program is that it has reduced rates. So farmers who want to hire interns, it's not your typical, rate for an employee. It's usually a reduced rate, which we try to give the farmer a little bit of a break when it comes to the amount they have to pay for the intern while on the farm. But again, that's something that you'll have to discuss with Michael Ruiz if you do decide to participate in the program. Another requirement is that participating farms can only hire up to 3 interns throughout the year. Farmers can have many interns throughout the time that the certificate is valid, which is usually 12 months from the time that they apply or get approved. However, there can only be 3 at one time. And that's only because we want to keep the group small. Sometimes having over 3 interns can be a little overwhelming. And maybe keeping it 3 will be easier to teach and for them to learn as well. Interns are exempt from the minimum wage, as I mentioned, and employment security premiums, which means that no minimum wage is required. However, farms can choose to offer stipends or housing, meals, sometimes even education as payment for the intern being on the farm. Farmers can create incentives for interns to apply. Usually these interns come from out of state, so they might need somewhere to live during the duration of the internship, but they're typically here for the education. And as I mentioned, of course, the interns are entitled to workers' compensation in an event of a workplace accident. Another requirement is that the farm must provide an educational component to interns, which is what I'll be going over here in just a few minutes. But essentially, it's just important for the farm to provide an educational setting for these interns. Learning environment is so important when it comes to hiring these interns. We focus on how the intern feels in regards to the curriculum that's submitted. Just want to make sure that the curriculum is well structured and is designed to provide vocational skills or vocational knowledge and skills as well. So how does the application process look like? So typically the farm will have to compile a Farm Internship Program application packet, and you'll just need to send it to myself, the coordinator, electronically and physically. And that application packet usually comes with the Farm Internship Program application, which is just a one-pager. Talks about what'll be going on with the internship, and it's signed, to make sure that the farmer understands, what they're sending us. We'll need a copy of the IRS Schedule F form or any similar tax form. Basically, that shows that they're under 250,000. That makes them a small farm, of course, being one of the requirements. And then they'll attach their educational curriculum, and usually that'll include the weekly lesson plan, titles of supplemental reading, links to the curricula online, or just any other reference material. So this is an opportunity for you to create your own curricula or curriculum. It gives you a chance to be creative and structure your educational plan the way that you would like throughout the year. I've seen farmers that create a plan, and then they review the plan with the interns then choose what they're most interested about, and then that's how they narrow down their focus, and they teach them that specific interest that the farm or the intern may be into. Every farm is different, and everybody has a different teaching style, and that's okay. We understand that some people may have vegetable production only on their farm. Maybe they'll have poultry, livestock. I mean, every farm is different, so we don't expect the curriculum to look exactly the same. We're open to whatever you submit, and we can always talk about it if it's maybe not enough or doesn't explain enough for like your weekly lessons or whatever the things may be. And like I said, I'll show an example here of a curriculum in just a few minutes. And for more information, you can always look on our website, and we have all this information as well if you forget what you need to apply. But you can always reach out to me as well. So the curriculum. So this is I took this from one of our farms that are currently participating in Midnight's Farm, and I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but I just wanted to go over some of the information that's included in the curriculum. So this farm put down a requirement for the commitment of the interns. So they'll include, what they require for those interns. Looks like here, vaccination for COVID-19, 6 months on farm commitment. Looks like they have a terra course. So some of the requirements can include, the average number of farm hours per week, maybe certain classes or class courses that the farm may offer. That might be the weekly online lessons, lab groups, assignments, and just participation requirements while they're on the farm. And like I said, every farm is different, so you might not have lab groups or assignments, but it's just important to put those on the curriculum to make sure that the interns understand what they're getting themselves into, and of course for me to sort of see what you're planning on teaching these interns throughout the year. Also, the farm can also include those commitments that are from the farm, so what they'll be providing, so the type of environment that they'll provide, maybe the housing, if they'll be providing that, if there's any stipends, any food, any education, which is great. I mean, the more detailed you are with the curriculum, I think the better. It just gives a better sense of what you'll be teaching and what your plan is, essentially. And here's some more of the curriculum. So it looks like here they put down what the interns are going to be learning. So they'll, at least according to this curriculum, they'll be doing composting, rotational grazing, heavy mulches, biochar, non-till market garden. And then here they list out, compost, and then what's going to be taught under that type of, or that lesson, basically. They have livestock. They'll include the work values as well. Like I said, every curriculum is different. It's just important that you just have information that the intern might want to know about before they even accept it. So yeah, if you have any questions on this, you can always send it to me. I'm happy to review it, and we can just kind of go back and forth on what you're planning on teaching these interns throughout the year. Here's one more example of a curriculum. This one looks a little shorter. It's just a one-pager, but It's actually multiple pages, but I just took this first page because it kind of goes over what the farm will be teaching, what they're requiring on the farm. So the internship is a full-time 5-day-a-week job for 7 to 8 months. So like I said, it all of them vary. It's just important that you have your weekly discussion topics, such as here they have financial planning, soil weather, and work-based learning. So maybe what you'll be teaching them while out on the field, whether that's vegetable production, poultry, fruit tree production, bees. I mean, the list goes on and on when it comes to work-based learning, and it's all hands-on, but it's just, like I said, important to put down your curriculum on what you'll possibly be teaching this intern. Okay, so let's say you do get approved, or let's say you send in your farm internship program. So what does the certification look like? So typically within 15 days or less from the time I receive your full complete application packet, we'll either accept or deny the application packet for the farm. Let's say you do get approved, typically you'll be sent an approval letter along with an approved certificate. The certificate contains the name of the farm, how long the certificate is valid for, and it is a 12-month from the time that you get approved. So let's say you apply today and you get approved today, it's April 2023, so it'll expire April 2024, basically. How many interns you'll be potentially hiring, a wage rate or stipends, if applicable, room and board, other compensations, that's all that it'll all be listed on the certificate. And of course, this information is what you provide to me through your application and your curriculum. Okay, so one of the items that we request from farms is a farm internship agreements. And on the right side, that's what it looks like. Essentially, it has details on what the internship will consist of. And it usually includes the term of the internship, so how long it's going to be, wages, stipends, if applicable, food and housing, average number of hours per week. And then the intern and the farmer will both sign and date, basically stating that they both understand the terms and conditions of the internship. And you'll just have to send, or the farmer will have to send the original to me, and then I'll keep that on file. Of course, you guys will keep a copy for yourselves, for your records, but yes, this is just important so that we know who's on your farm, and so we have a chance to go out there and maybe talk to them as well. And this is reviewed during the farm visits. So what is a farm visit? So a farm visit is usually scheduled so that there's communication between L&I, interns, and farmers. Essentially, the farm visits ensure compliance of the farm internship program as a standard review for participants. So what does a farm visit look like? Essentially, I'll just show up. We'll do a walkthrough through the farm just to see how the intern, or what the intern is working on, what type of activities they're doing. And then I'll usually conduct interviews with the interns first and then the farmers. And some of the questions I ask is just, how's the internship going? Do you feel like you're being, educated? Are they providing what they said they were going to provide through the internship agreements? So those are some of the things I'll ask interns. And then, of course, the farmers, I'll ask, the farmers as well, how it's going for them, if this intern, is doing what they're supposed to. And we basically just want to be that middle ground, so that if there's any issues that arise throughout the internship, maybe we can discuss it and try to resolve it before things go south. But I know I've met interns who are super excited about the internship, and there's no issues at all. But there's also been times where I show up and interns feel like they're just employees, they're just doing repetitive tasks and they're really not learning anything new. And they just feel like it's just a job, not necessarily any learning. But we try to aim for the learning, which is the reason why we conduct these interviews, and just want to make sure that everybody is is on the right path, I guess. So I did want to share a few differences between an intern and what an employee looks like. So what is an intern? So typically an intern will be a beginner, maybe an intermediate farmer, or they're just starting. They're not 100%. Oh yeah, I've done this for years. Although there is some of those interns, but typically they're all beginners. Tasks for an intern are usually diverse, so they're not repetitive like an employee. It's more learning rather than just that repetitive work. Although there is a lot in farming, and I totally understand, but as long as there's lessons with what they're doing, or whatever job they're working on, that's what's important. Usually the intern payments will be education, it'll be housing, it'll be food and or stipends. But as I mentioned earlier, they're not entitled to the minimum wage requirements because they are interns. So they don't receive a wage, but they are entitled to worker compensation protections in case they get hurt on the farm. And then an employee would be a person who conducts the daily work. They'll typically do repetitive type of work or tasks, and they're paid for their hours on the production side of the farm. It's not so much, maybe they'll be learning, but they're not there for that. They're more for the production of the farm, making sure that they make money. Employees are usually paid per hour, and they are provided that W-2 at the end of the year. There's no guaranteed education, as I mentioned, but these employees are entitled to standard workplace protections, such as the Minimum Wage Act and workers' compensation, all that. And I know one of the questions that we run into are stipends when it comes to the Farm Internship Program. The question we get is, do we need to provide W-2s? What does the stipend look like? What do the interns have to do at the end of the year when it comes to taxes? So we just wanted to include this slide on there. And I'm just going to read it off, but due to the educational nature of the Farm Internship Program, wages are not required for interns. However, participating farms offer other types of compensation, which may include a cash stipend, as I mentioned, that's paid weekly, monthly, daily, but it's not based on the hours that are worked. Maybe the farmer chooses to pay an hourly wage, but minimum wage laws still do not apply. I mean, if they want to pay them $10, or not $10, but well, I guess if whatever they decide to pay them per hour, that's fine. But the minimum wage laws don't really apply to them. Maybe they'll pay them with room and board, housing, food, or maybe even a share of the harvest, and that's fine as well. But the W-2s for interns, so participating farms do not need to provide interns W-2s because it's not a wage, it's more of a stipend. And as far as taxes go, I know we had recently got some questions about taxes, or if maybe it's taxable as income. So these wages, stipends, or other benefits, they may be taxable as income, but we always our advice is that interns should always consult with a tax professional for any additional information. Just because we don't deal with taxes, I think talking to a tax professional, they might be able to. Yeah, but that's something we don't deal with, as I mentioned.
Cesar, I'm gonna just quickly, there's a question in the chat that I don't think was covered. For this program specifically, for the Farm Internship Program, are minors considered? Could they be considered as interns?
Yes, thank you for the question. So minors, so typically what the ages is 18 and older. So I guess at that point they're not considered minors, right? But yeah, I think 18 is a age just because they're young adults, and they're no longer restricted from some of the duties that they might have to be doing on the farm. So yeah, usually it's 18 years and older. Hope that answers the question there, Tammy.
Yeah, it does. Just a follow up to that, because I've gotten this question before as well. Because a lot of our farms, local farms, have youth working, obviously there's a different role when it comes to family, right, working on the farm. But what outside of the internship program is there a youth classification for internships with L&I, or does that just only fall into that familial bucket of?
Yeah. I guess that's something that would probably need to be discussed with workers' compensation. So with Michael Ruiz, because to be honest, I'm not 100% sure if there is a classification for them. But because Michael's the one that usually deals with, those classifications, I would definitely, we can always ask him and see if to get some clarification, but
Yeah, but for this program, you're saying it's 18 and over.
that's correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. I'm looking at the chat now that I have it up. So I wondered if interns would receive a 1099 non-employee compensation. It sounds like it's something to talk to the tax professional about. Yeah, that's definitely something that you would need to discuss with the tax professional, just to make sure that, I guess, you're on the right path. Yeah, not 100% sure on that one, but I would definitely discuss it with a professional, tax professional, that is. Okay. All right. So that's pretty much it on my end. So we're going to move on to the agricultural and employment standards. Feel free to keep putting the questions in the chat, and then I'll answer them as I go. I'm not sure if Christina is back on. She might not be.
I am.
Oh, yes, she is
Hello,
here.
everyone. Hi. So I'll introduce myself. For context, on this particular day, my Wi-Fi has been spotty, and right when everyone was trickling in, my Wi-Fi just disconnected. But I'm back, and I figure not turning the camera on would be a safe bet to keep me on. Cesar, thank you for starting out the presentation and talking about FIP. Some details and background is, my name is Christina Rodriguez. I'm the Agricultural Employment Specialist at the Department of Labor and Industries in the Employment Standards Program. So I supervise the farm labor unit, and we do a variety of administrative and regulatory functions that includes farm labor contracting, administering the statewide farm labor contractor licenses, conducting on-site investigations, and also regularly scheduled audits of registered farm labor contractors. We do the Farm Internship Program. We provide guidance over complex questions when it relates to wage and hour laws in agriculture. We give a lot of guidance about agricultural employment standards, etc. And we also, since the new changes with agricultural overtime, have a team of agricultural outreach specialists who provide statewide outreach services to the agricultural industry. We're all bilingual, and so we provide our information and cater it to the audience who's seeking it out. We work with farm workers, farm labor contractors, employers, and we provide the educational outreach in English and in Spanish. So that's a little bit about me. My apologies about the Wi-Fi. I would have mentioned all of this earlier, but I think the timing is great, because now we're going to segue into agricultural employment standards. Because if this audience, if I understand correctly, are owners or small farm owners, it could be that you have employees at your farm. So we wanted to provide some information about that as well. Next slide. So I'm going to talk about some key points that relate to agricultural employment standards. First, I'll talk about the Minimum Wage Act. As you all know, the Minimum Wage Act for Washington State provides protections to workers, and those protections are all under the umbrella of the Minimum Wage Act. They include minimum wage, tips and service charges. This is particularly for restaurant industries. Paid sick leave protections are under the Minimum Wage Act. This also includes overtime, which is time and a half for hours worked over 40 hours per work week or whatever the threshold is for agriculture. The threshold is 48 hours right now in 2023. Protections from retaliation for exercising the above rights are also written into the Minimum Wage Act. So these protections apply to most employees, except those who are specifically exempt from the law. Those could be white collar professionals like executive, administrative, computer professionals, and outside salespersons. Usually when we work with the agricultural sector, that does not apply. What is it called? The salaried exemptions do not apply. If people are doing manual labor, they're still provided the protections for the Minimum Wage Act. And well, Cesar talked about interns with the Farm Internship Program, so that's another detail of exemptions. And also at the bottom of the screen, you'll see these little boxes that say for more information. We have these resources that provide a lot of guidance. For example, if a section of the law like Minimum Wage Act could be confusing, we try and break it down in plain talk with our administrative policies. So those resources at the bottom are there, and we're going to provide the slides, and you can check those out as well. Continuing on, with the minimum wage, employers must pay most employees at least the minimum wage for every hour worked. This year in 2023, the minimum wage is $15.74. And one key thing to remember is that employees who are 16 years old may be paid 85% of the minimum wage, and that is calculated as $13.38 per hour. Also, employees who are paid piece rate wages, so wages that are based on the worker's productivity, those wages must be at least the minimum wage for all hours worked and the rest breaks. Additionally, employers must pay workers an agreed wage or the minimum wage, whichever is greater, whichever prevails. That's usually what we say. For example, if you were to look at the federal minimum wage and the Washington state minimum wage, the one that provides more protections to the worker is the one that would apply. And in agriculture, sometimes there's an agreed wage. It's not the minimum wage. It's something that could be based on piece rate production or something that could be higher than the minimum wage, of course. It's agreed upon in the terms and conditions of employment that's discussed before the workers start to work. Moving on, there's some record keeping requirements that are helpful to take note of. Employers must keep for at least 3 years these record keeping details. The name, address, and occupation of each employee must be recorded. Also, the dates of employment need to be recorded and kept on record for 3 years. This would also include the rate and rates of pay. And when we talk about it in plural, it could be the rates of pay broken down when it's piece rate, when it's hourly, and also if the rest break pay is different, that must be recorded. The amount paid each pay period to each worker must be recorded, and also the hours worked. And one thing to note about hours worked is we provide a lot of guidance in our administrative policies about hours worked. Sometimes in agriculture, it could be like a piece rate worker is attending a mandatory training for 3 hours to learn about the new control methods to use pesticides, or to learn about ladder safety for their orchards, etc. So that time where they need to be in a training is also considered hours worked. So those different things need to be recorded. And employment records must be available upon request by an employee within a reasonable time. If they ask for those records, it must be provided. And the reason why we have this detail about 3 years is because in agricultural employment, there's a 3-year retention period when it comes to record keeping requirements. Additionally, employees are, they receive their itemized pay statements. They're entitled to the itemized pay statements by law. And at the time wages are paid, agricultural labor laws require that each agricultural employee receive an itemized pay statement. And because of the requirements in the law and the guidance resulting from the Washington State Supreme Court decisions, employers must provide detailed itemized pay statements showing the following. So it could be a breakdown of the pay base in hours or days worked, applicable rate or rates of pay. And here we have some different categories, kind of like what I mentioned earlier. There's piece rate active time, which is the work that is directly associated to piece rate production, like going up and down orchard ladders, picking, putting it in bins, weighing the production. There's also piece rate downtime, which is the work that is outside of the scope of piece rate picking work. And that would be like what I mentioned in the scenario of a mandatory training, for instance, or traveling from one orchard to another. If they're 30 minutes apart, that travel time in the middle of the day would be piece rate downtime because it's outside of the scope of piece rate picking work. Other categories include hourly rates, overtime rates, and rest periods. Also, what would be included in the itemized pay statement would be gross pay and all the deductions from the pay for the respective pay period. Additionally, wages must be paid monthly or on a regular scheduled payday. It could be monthly, twice a month. And also the farms have the ability to decide what the work week would be. It could be from Sunday to Saturday. It could be Monday to Sunday. It's as long as it's consistent. And then for more information, you can see our administrative policy ESD2, which is record keeping and access to payroll records for agricultural employment. Next, I want to talk about rest period requirements. So in agriculture, rest periods must be paid, and rest periods must be at least 10 minutes for every 4 hours of work. Sometimes, because of the nature of agriculture, rest periods are 15 minutes. That's up to the employer, but at least 10 minutes is what is required. And rest periods are required for employees to take no later than 3 hours and 50 minutes into the shift. That's basically how we look at it, how it has to be for every 4 hours of work. It can be no later than 3 hours and 50 minutes into the first shift. Rest periods cannot be waived or interrupted. Even if an employee wants to waive it, it's not something that can be waived. They're entitled to that protection. And agricultural piece rate workers must be paid separately for rest periods. And the separate payment is based on the regular rate of pay or the minimum wage, whichever is greater. And this detail comes from the 2015 Supreme Court case decision with Washington State. Maybe you're all familiar with it. It was the case of Demetrio versus Sakuma Brothers Farms, which determined the separate pay for rest periods. Moving on, I'll talk about meal period requirements. So meal periods are usually not required to be paid. They must be paid if the employee is not relieved from their duties. So for example, if they start their meal period and then they have to go back, they're called in, it's interrupted. That interruption then means that they would have to be paid for that time. Meal periods are required to be 30 minutes for every 5 hours worked. And in the peak of harvest season, it could be that they work for many hours from sun up to sundown. So employees must receive an additional 30-minute meal period if they work 11 or more hours. And that's because of the 30-minute meal period for every 5 hours worked detail. Additionally, employees may choose to waive their meal period if the employer agrees to it. So this is how meal periods differ from rest periods. This can be waived. But what L&I provides guidance on in this matter is that if an employee wants to waive their meal period, the employee must be the one who is like clarifying that they want to waive it. The employee can request their meal periods at any given time if they change their mind. So for example, if at the beginning of harvest season, they say that they can waive it, they change their mind, they're entitled to get it again. And we recommend for the protections of record keeping requirements that an owner obtains a written waiver request from each employee in their native language. It could be handwritten. And like I said, if at some later date the employee wishes to receive the meal periods again, any agreement would no longer be in effect. And obtaining a written waiver request is a way to help keep that in your records for if it ever comes up in any scenario. I'm gonna look at the chat. I saw something come up. I'd like to know more about unemployment benefits, which might be available to folks who want to stay on as employees for a second season. Rebecca, that's a good question. Well, I know Employment Security Department specializes in unemployment benefits. So I think they would be a good resource. This is the first time I've seen that kind of request or inquiry, so I'm not sure, but I can look into it and follow up. Yeah, it's just usually that unemployment benefits correspond to the Employment Security Department. I hope that's okay. Okay, moving on. Like I mentioned earlier, Cesar and myself, we work in the farm labor unit within the Employment Standards Program at L&I. And what you see on the screen here is a map of the different agents of the unit. So we have 2 folks who are outreach specialists. They're in Spokane and Mount Vernon. Then we have 4 agents who work with farm labor contractor compliance. Cesar, as you know, he does both. He does farm labor contractor investigations, and also he's the Farm Internship Program Coordinator. And as you can see here, we're spread across the state. We all work with the agricultural industry, and we're placed in locations so that we can meet the public and serve them. And being spread out helps a lot for that. Additionally, what would I like to say? Like I said, we're all bilingual, so we speak in English and Spanish, and we can provide those services in both languages. And we provide technical guidance regarding wage and hour rules and regulations and administrative policies. And also we provide bilingual outreach and education services. So I just want to say that Jess was wonderful in reaching out to us and asking for a presentation about the Farm Internship Program and different wage and hour laws that apply to employees. And so our outreach services are available upon request. If any of you would like to get a presentation about a detailed topic, you're welcome to reach out to us. Our farm labor unit inbox is in the turquoise box in the right-hand side. And so we do presentations about different topics. It could be about the new agricultural overtime changes. It could be about executive, administrative, professional salary exemptions. it could be about different things. So if you are interested at all, please feel welcome to reach out. Also, we're going to be providing these slides to you, so you'll have our contact information. Yeah. Next slide.
So,
All right.
sorry, Christina. There's a follow-up question from Rebecca about whether employers do pay for the 30 minutes for an employee lunch each day is underneath that requirement. It was a few slides back, I think.
Oh, so meal periods do not have to be paid. An employer can choose to pay it. But it's more like if the meal period is interrupted, then it has to be paid.
Okay.
Yes, I can go back to the slide if you want, just to refresh.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
And just as a reminder, so Cesar was kind of going over the farm internship programming and the piece that applies to internships, and this is specific to paid employees, not interns. So is there underneath the farm internship program, I know you had brought up, Cesar, the application also about the requirements in the application and what you're asking and the farms that are taking part in it. Is there anything that you need outlined from them regarding these type of things like rest periods and meal periods? Is that included in that as well?
As far as the curriculum that we receive, they usually don't mention anything about rest and meal periods. I think it's just a general understanding of when, you know, those need to be provided to the interns. But yeah, they don't. I haven't seen farms that put that in their curriculum.
Okay.
But
So
you're
that's
more
a
than welcome to.
requirement for that program to do
Yeah.
stuff, but okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
but
not something that Cesar would audit
Mhm.
for their farm visits.
Okay.
You're welcome to include it, but you know, that's not, like Christina said, not something I go out and investigate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying, Christina, that under an agricultural employee status, though, if they're a paid employee, then it's up to the employer or the farmer to choose whether or not they're going to pay for their meal period.
Yeah. Like they're usually not required to be paid, but if an employer chooses to pay for it, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry, I interrupted you. You were saying thank you for that. I think you were at the end of your presentation, correct?
Yeah, we pretty much reached the end. So this is the designated time for questions and answers. If you have any questions that still are on your mind, any follow-up questions, we're welcome. You're welcome to share, and we can go over that now.
Just really quick, I did see I think we skipped one of the questions here from Tammy Matheson. They mentioned farm that also have food processing. Can that be included in their description? Yes, if you want to include the description of, you know, what the farm does, if it includes food processing, please feel free to include that in there. As I mentioned, the more detail, the better, just to give us a better idea of, you know, what the farm does and maybe what they'll potentially be teaching those interns throughout the year.
So yeah, I saw that question also, and it kind of posed an additional question in my mind for the program itself. You know, is there a percentage split on like what you consider as, because you have requirements of what a farmer is and what they're going to be doing with the interns, but is there like, if the farmer is maybe they're only making 10,000 a year and it's very limited farming they're doing, but more processing, is there like a split with like the farmer has to produce a certain amount to be like, what's your definition, I guess, in that terms, in order for them to take part in the program? Because sometimes we have farmers that are maybe only producing a little bit, but they're also processing outside goods. Would they be considered as a farmer underneath this if they had an intern learning more just about the processing piece, let's say?
We really just look to see that they make less than $250,000 in revenue to qualify. Off the top of my head, they do a variety of different specializations. Like some farms are focusing on produce, some farms focus on what's the word, where they have cattle,
Livestock or
livestock, yes. So it could be a variation. We don't necessarily look at the, like, if they make 10,000 in revenue per se.
yeah.
Okay, so they could be like farming on a really small scale and have an intern still. It's not,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, there are farmers, I mean, we've even had donation centers or places where they just grow a crop to donate it. You know, they really don't make any money and they're really small farms. And I've seen them have interns and basically just help through the you know, harvesting or, you know, planting of anything. So yeah, it can be small farms or, you know, medium-sized farms. But as Christina mentioned, we just make sure that they're under that 250,000. That's what
Okay.
makes them eligible.
okay.
yeah, if they do processing work, I think that that's fine. We just look to see, like, is the educational curriculum provided to them? You know, it could be that, you know, a future farmer will then veer off into winemaking. So if they learn the hands-on experience, that's what we look at, you know, the educational component.
Okay. I think there's some questions in the chat. Rebecca, yes, if you have a question, you can unmute if you want to ask it directly. I don't know if you're able to unmute yourself. Let's see.
I had a question. I've had someone helping me do my L&I reporting, but maybe you could just walk us as a group sort of through like the general process of what it looks like to report our hours to L&I. Maybe that would be helpful.
Like the workers' compensation hours.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So as far as I know, of course, Michael Reese, who is in charge of, you know, workers' compensation, he would have more details. But in general, basically, you'll need to document how many hours the interns will be working, because that's what they'll ask you when you report to L&I or workers' compensation. So depending on the amount of hours that you work, you'll have a rate assigned to you as a farm. And it can be multiple, not just one, but yeah, from there, basically, they'll just multiply the amount of intern hours times the rate, and then that's what will be the premium you'll need to pay out of pocket. But typically, that's usually how they go about reporting the hours and, you know, paying for the premiums. Yeah, am I missing anything, Christina?
No, I was also going to say the same thing, that for that particular question, Michael Ruiz, the L&I account manager, would be a helpful resource when it comes to like reporting hours.
Okay, good.
And then Rebecca asked the question, do farmers pay for the 10-minute rest periods every 4 hours? And yes, so rest periods are paid. And that's a requirement resulting in the 2015 Washington State Supreme Court case decision.
Rebecca, is that the one that you wanted to ask unmuted, or do you have more questions that you wanted to follow up with? Not seeing her.
Yeah, you can unmute.
Yeah.
Background noise is fine.
Yeah, I'm not seeing her unmuting, so I guess that might have been her question, but yeah, chime in anytime if you have questions. It looks like Betsy, you had a question about, you had 2 farm businesses that you want to include interns with. One does value added processing. The value of the egg produces products as Schedule F is under 50,000, but the sales of value added can be over 250,000. Can I include the interns on this farm, or can I just have interns in the farm part of the operation, not the processed end? So that's a good question.
So what I understand is Cesar reviews IRS tax forms to see if the farm would qualify based on the, you know, the revenue threshold.
Right, so the question I have is the report, when I listened to the presentation and looked at the form, he said you submit Schedule F, which I do fill out for my agricultural production under my business. But then we take that agricultural product and process it. And since you brought up wine, we grow grapes and then we just use our grapes and make wine. So the question I have is, can I include interns on that farm because of the Schedule F shows less than 50,000 of farm income, but then I don't sell it. I use it to make a value added product, which can be over $250,000 in total sales for that product. So that is a quite, I feel like I'm a small farm in the world of wine grapes for sure, but I don't know if I can include interns in through this program because of that sticking point. Again, my Schedule F will show less than 50,000. If I have to show just the overall business sales, I just don't, this is like a little sticking point for me. I don't know how to interpret this.
Yeah, thank you for your question. So my question, I guess, so we do look at the sales that are listed on Schedule F. So I believe it's number 2 on part 1 that talks about sales of livestock, produce, grains, or other products. So is that what you're referring to? That's over
Right.
250?
Right. I'm like looking at my 22 form right now, and I have a 1040 Schedule F for farm income. I have what the value of the grapes are that we produced, and then but we don't sell them to someone else, we use them. So we have 2 separate entities, 2 LLCs. I have the one LLC, which is the farm part of it, is solely owned by the winery part of it, another LLC. So because when we set the business up, I talked to a lot of folks in Washington State, and they said there is an advantage to having your farm component of it be a separate LLC that is then owned by the other LLC that does the processing. So the question, but because it's a non-reporting entity, because we just basically turn them over in-house and use them to process a value-added product, which is wine, then we can be over that 250,000 threshold for the sale of the wine component of it, not the grapes. So the question I have again for you is it, if it's Schedule F that I submit, or is there some other reporting that has to be submitted to see if we qualify?
Just Schedule F is what I understand.
Okay, well then, because then I'll submit Schedule F and we'll see what you say.
Yeah, we can definitely look at your Schedule F, and we can make a decision from there.
Cool.
Just to make sure that we look through everything. I know that there's been farms that are close to that 250,000, but there's a few things that might be putting them over the 250 that we could probably talk about or figure out.
But the farm product is very low actually, and it's only it's as I said, less than 50,000. So it's a pretty small business. I do have employees that I have. It's not necessarily a very profitable part of the overall business because it's farming, but I've had people interested in learning about wine grapes, and so this is why I'm just checking to see if this is allowed under this program, and I'll submit it, and then you can make your determination based on that.
Okay.
And then I had one more question while I have the floor.
Go for it.
My bookkeeper, who does my employee wages and does all the L&I stuff, because it's like a big headache, so I don't want to do it. So if I am approved to have interns through this program, is there a person that she can talk to about the intern L&I reporting? Because I'm going to make her do it. I'm going to pay her to do it.
Michael Ruiz,
Who
the
is it?
L&I account manager.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
Michael Ruiz. Yeah, and his information is here in the presentation, which will
Oh,
be
great.
sending out to you.
Awesome.
Yeah, he's the go-to classification specialist on his end with the Farm Internship Program.
Great.
So L&I is this really large agency where we have different divisions, and when it comes to industrial insurance, it's a completely separate division, but he's the contact for that classification for Farm Internship.
And
Mhm.
and if I have, as I mentioned before, I have another small vegetable farm that I would like to be part of the intern program under this as well, without employees. And so he would also be the same person to discuss how the reporting needs to be done, correct?
That's
Yeah,
correct.
Thank you.
thank
Thank you.
you.
Do we have anybody else who has questions?
I really appreciate how interactive this is. This is great.
Yeah. Keep the questions coming.
Yeah,
Well,
it makes us excited when there's questions, because then it's like, oh, well, like here we are presenting about the program, right? And now there's this potential new farmer to participate and have their interns join. So it's really nice that you're proactively here, first of all, and considering. And we're also going to provide you Cesar's contact. So you'll have sorry, I was looking at the chat. Yeah, you'll have like the ability to ask follow-up questions even after this particular webinar.
Rebecca just typed in that she's trying to speak. I don't have the ability to unmute you for some reason. For some reason, Rebecca, you look like you're unmuted on my end, but then
Yeah.
it says I have to ask you to unmute. So I just did. I don't know if you're on a phone. Sometimes the function doesn't work properly or it's not popping up. But if you want to type your question in, if you're not able to speak, because it shows that you're unmuted on my end. But I'm not hearing you. So if you have a question, please type it in if it's easy for you to do. Just want to follow up.
Okay.
Oh, she's typing in. She really believes that she read the as of 2023. I'm not saying anymore. Oh, employers do need to, sorry.
This is suspenseful.
I know, I want to know what the question is. Pay for the 30 minutes of lunch. Christina, maybe that you can speak to that if there was an update in the 2023 requirements.
Oh, not in particular. I monitor legislative affairs, and there's no bill that changes meal periods. It's more just it's not required to be paid, but employers can pay it if they want to. And if it's interrupted, then it has to be paid. You know, like they take one bite out of their sandwich, they're required to go back into the field, maybe because of some sense of urgency that they're required back. If it's interrupted in that scenario, yes, it has to be paid.
Okay.
You're
So,
welcome.
yeah, so Cesar, I'm curious too, because this has been 20 county, so the farm internship program itself has been available to 20 counties. There is a new bill in, I believe, that's stating that it's going to try to expand it. We did have a farmer that was on from a county that I know is not part of it currently. So do you have any idea when that decision will be made? And if so, what would the implication? I mean, would it just then be you doing this? It would be the same program, it's just expanding, or is there additional things that are part of that farmers might need to know about?
Yeah, that's definitely something that Christina would know more about. Yeah, we don't have anything set in stone right now. Obviously nothing has passed, and the legislative session is still on. So maybe Christina could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So, I'll just give you a context about what the bill language is about. But I can't speak in absolutes because we're still in session and we don't know how the legislative session will result. But the proposed bill is for the Farm Internship Program to be expanded to all 39 counties. So one thing to keep in mind is the existing 20 counties are grandfathered into the existing regulations of how the Farm Internship Program works right now. The new additional 19 counties, the ones that haven't been eligible, these ones will be, how do I say it, tasked with like two key details. And it is that for those new 19 counties, they can have up to 3 interns, but one of the 3 interns must be of a migrant background, like a migrant farm worker family background, like the descendant of farm workers. That's the detail that would come into play. So if you have like 3 prospective interns, you would have to present to L&I in your application and confirm that one of the interns is from a migrant farm working background. The existing 20 counties are already grandfathered in, so they wouldn't have to have that requirement. And so you will absolutely know by April 23rd. That's sine die. That's the end of legislative session. And then the bill would come into effect immediately. So once the governor signs it, like the end of April, early May, that's when it would be effective. And that's when applications can start streaming in for those additional 19 counties if the bill passes.
So for the farmers that have taken part then in this program in previous years and continue to want to take part in it, what is the date that it goes through currently? Is it 2025?
Yeah, every ledge session they extend it. It used to be the Farm Internship Pilot Project back when it started in 2010. And like whenever that expiration clause is like approaching, the legislative session then extends it and extends it and extends it. So I don't see it expiring. Yes, the main changes are it would expand statewide because we've had a lot of questions. For example, a small farm in Clallam County will be like, well, I know some people in my community and in my neighboring county where they are eligible. So because of that, they want to expand it to be statewide.
Yeah, and I expect you've probably got farms that are continuing year after year and building upon their educational programming that are continuing to come back and apply over and over again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. We've even met interns who come from out of state, like for example, an intern from New Jersey. They chose to come to Washington because of the protections under the Farm Internship Program, the educational requirements, the workplace protections when it comes to like an injury, things where other states don't have those types of programs. So,
Yeah, I would say most of the interns are out of state. There are a few that are in state, but yeah, they come from California. I think one from Minnesota recently that I got. But yeah, they come from all over the place, and typically they're out of state, coming from being woofers or just another program, internship program that was available in their state, but of course doesn't offer some of the protections or there's nobody that's really regulating the internship while they're there. So I know I've heard some horror stories of other internships where interns are just made work repetitive every day, and it's not really a learning type of environment. And then I've heard the other side, but yeah, it's mainly out of state is what we see.
Yeah, And then when you do your on-farm visits, are you also doing education at the same time of like, if you see something that's maybe not quite up to snuff, are you educating them on how to be better in compliance with that? I assume that that's part of what your follow-up is with the farmer.
Yes, that's correct. So if we see something that maybe looks unsafe, or yeah, we'll definitely point it out. But yes, we do give education about even the farm internship program itself. Maybe they've applied, but they don't know the background, or some of the requirements, things like that. Yeah, and that's definitely something we discuss while we sit down, and it's just a casual conversation, really. I know that some farms that I've ran into, maybe that weren't where the interns felt that they weren't being really educated. It was more just work. I know I ran into those type, and we have a sit down, and we go over what the rules are, or I guess what they're required as farmers to be providing to these interns. And yeah, I'll do follow-ups, and typically with one visit we'll get them on track.
Right. Rebecca, it looks like you just typed in another
yeah.
question. Or if employees work 3.5 hours straight, then no rest period is required or paid. And then after the meal period, another 3.5 hours. Then at the end of the day, there would be one paid rest period or 0. Christina, do you?
Well, so a meal period is different from a rest period. So if there's 3.5 hours and that's it, like they go home, okay. But if they come back, like if there's a meal period in between and then there's more hours worked, then a rest period still needs to be taking place within the first 4 hours, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So it could be you give them a rest period paid and then a 30-minute meal period.
Yeah, Rebecca, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but you said if they work 3.5 hours, then they get their meal period, and then another 3.5 hours. So that's a 7 hour day. So that's already, you're looking at a rest period and at least a meal period. It's total of 7 hours there.
Yeah, it sounds like the scenario is that they come back to work after the first 3.5. So a rest period paid would have to be put in there.
Hope that answers your question.
I don't see anybody raising their hand or typing. So I just want to make sure.
We're so sorry,
so
Rebecca.
sorry.
We don't
I'm
know
not
why you can't unmute.
Yeah, I've been asking you to unmute. I don't know if you're seeing anything pop up on your end saying unmute. But that's the only thing looks that I can do. I can't unmute you. I don't know if you're on the phone. I'm gonna ask you to unmute one more time just to see if it pops up for you.
Yeah, sometimes laptop microphones aren't functioning.
Yeah.
Or I've also noticed that if you're on your phone, there's like phone settings where you deactivate the camera or you deactivate the mute. So it could be that it's like locked in your settings. I've done that with Zoom calls on the phone, accidentally turning on the video, giving them a horrible angle. So that's how I learned about the settings. Not sure.
But I think, Rebecca, if you have follow-up questions, we're going to be providing both Cesar and Christina's contact information. And so I'm sure they would be more than happy to connect with you on a separate, either via email or phone.
Yeah, we won't be strangers after this.
Wonderful. Well, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to kind of give that overview of the program and then the differences between farm interns and employees, and then Christina giving that kind of background information on what are the requirements for the farm employees if a farmer should go that route. Renee, did you have a question before we sign off?
No, I just wanted to say thanks. I was wondering I don't know if this matters. I do have a question.
Go for it.
My interns usually start in March, but I send in my application like the end of April because it's because a couple people come later. Does that timing matter at all in terms of the certificate, or it says on the application like when everyone's start dates are? I just wasn't sure if I should try and change the timing at all.
Yeah, that's okay, as long as the certificate is still active.
Oh, right.
I'm trying to look here when we got you approved, but yeah, as long as you're still active, they're welcome to send over or start your interns on the internship. Yeah, if it's time for a renewal, then just go ahead and send us the renewal, and you're still welcome to have your interns, but we'll get that process as soon as possible for you.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, like if you're reapplying for your certificate, it doesn't expire like December 31st. It's active for, the full 365 days.
Okay, perfect. It just switches people, so I just wasn't sure. It switches people in March, but then it I recertify in May. But it sounds like the certificate kind of lasts until I recertify.
Yeah, as long as you're consistent with the intern agreement form that you provide your new interns. I think I froze.
Oh, I think Renee froze on.
Oh,
Actually.
Yeah, if you have any questions, you're welcome to send them through email. Make as many questions as you'd like, and you can send them over and we're happy to reply. We're always available for you guys if you have any questions about the application process or about your interns. It may be that we don't know the answer to it, but we can definitely get you to somebody that can get that answered for you.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys being here, and we're almost at time. So if anybody has any other questions, please throw them out now. Otherwise, thank you guys for joining. We will go ahead and send out the follow-up. The follow-up will also include an evaluation link, so please make sure that you click that. It takes just a quick minute, and then we'll be including the slide deck and additional resources from the L&I folks that might be beneficial for you, specific to the L&I Farm Internship Program. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thanks everyone.